So a spot of medium CA glue, that'll be all we need for this job, and I think the idea is we build the outside facing surfaces first and sand them back, and then we'll do the countertop. So start by putting some glue on that surface there. Super glue's fine for wood. It won't give us any problems. That's our first piece on. What we'll do is the side piece next. Right now that's square, but actually we want to put a slight curve into this edge, and we'll do that when we sand it. It's only slight, so we should be able to achieve that without any other modification other than just a sanding. Right, we'll give that a moment to dry, and then we can sand it back to the level of the top of the counters. While the counter is just drying for a moment, we can cut this stainless steel door. Just eyeballing this, to be honest. And there's our door. So we can glue that on now, I think. Okay, that's our door in. Now we do need to put some shelves in. We could leave it like that. And there is a little sign, little silver stainless steel sign there that has the Barnet Terrice, says Terrice bar on it. So we could put a little silver stripe in there as well. Now the smallest micro strip I have, just want to test it, I think is too big. The other option would be to use some plastic card and cut that into strips for shelves. Again, I think it'd be too big. So I think what we're going to do is leave it there. It gives you the impression, which is what we're after. Right, this is dried now, so we can carefully shape this. That gets me where I need to be on the corner. We've still got to round it off, but we won't do that with the file. I'm tempted to try and cut that with a knife, I think. We might have to sand the end of this because we've got to allow for the thickness of that against the deck. So we might end up having to take a small amount off. Now, in amongst the photographs that Stephen has taken for me recently, when you look at this bar, the bar top finishes, and then you've got some more silver boxes. So I might try and do this slightly shorter so we can paint some silver in on the inside, which would certainly look more authentic. Right, let's get that sanded down. Okay, so now we're going to put this little curve in here, and it's just rounding it off. Okay, so we wanted to laminate this together for the bar top, so I think that's the next job. And maybe it'd be actually easier to glue one on at a time, trim it down and laminate it that way. Yeah, I think so. So I want to try and glue it down so that we have a slight overhang of white plastic and an overhang of the wood at the front, but not quite by that much. So I reckon we could cut that strip in half. Let's see if we can do that. I'm just trying to glue on one edge where we're going to be in contact with the plastic. It won't be seen underneath, it really won't, but okay, that's our double thickness top with an overhang. We'll give that a moment and then we'll sand it. Whilst we're giving it a moment, we can do this edge here. We just need to take this back a little bit and make it straight. And I'm just going to sand the top surfaces and outer surfaces so that they're nice and smooth as well, and then we can give it a little bit of gloss varnish. That's our mini bar. So what we'll do next is paint the stainless steel in again, and then when that's dried we can give the whole thing a nice coat of varnish.
Now, to understand why this ship is unique and so special, we have to understand what's the difference between a liner and a cruise ship. So this ship unquestionably is a liner. She is not a cruise ship. She's a liner that can act as a cruise ship, but foremost, she is the liner because she has deep draft. She has a very pointed bow, as we shall see in a moment. Her shape is like a pyramid, where all the weight is concentrated in the middle, where the most buoyancy is situated, so that she's not put under huge stress and strain, especially when she crosses the hostile Atlantic. She's much stronger than a cruise ship. The hull sides on this ship is nearly twice that of a cruise ship. And she has fuel tanks to enable her to make long ocean passages at speed. She's obviously has the potential for very high speed running, and she has enhanced stability and various margins to enable her to cope with the roughest weather. And most importantly, on the Atlantic, she has a large array of public spaces that can be used to entertain people on the 6-7 day transatlantic crossing. So the big trouble with all of these things is that they add cost to the ship. And those attributes going from cruise ship to liner added 40% to the cost of the ship. And it also adds a similar amount to the running of this ship. And that's a huge pill to swallow, especially for the accountants of a company like Carnival. And in fact, when I proposed my initial design, my management said to me, well, no, you really should do a ship like this. It's got red and black funnels, it's got a black hull. Let's call something like that a liner. And I said, well, as good as that ship is, if it's crossing the North Atlantic in winter, in December or March and April, if it comes across really bad weather, it's going to have to slow down to almost a crawl because it won't be able to sustain the pressures of sailing on the Atlantic. And after some discussion, I showed them a picture of the Italian ship, the Michelangelo. And she crossed the Atlantic in April 1966. Here she is, one of two sister ships of the Italian line. A large wave came over the bow of the ship and almost demolished the forward superstructure with subsequent loss of life. So I said, we can't have a ship like this. We've got to have a fully fledged ocean liner built totally of steel. And eventually, and especially after seeing these pictures, the management decided to allow me to do that, as long as I came up with a design that would offset that 40% premium. Now, I have a personal philosophy that says before attempting anything new, you have the best chance of success by looking back at the past. So I looked at what ships had really inspired me, what ships have worked really well. And so obviously there were ships like the Normandy, the fantastic Rotterdam of 1959, one of my favourite ships, which is now a hotel in Rotterdam, and of course QE2. So
Right, while the paint is drying on our bar, I want to just deal with the little cupboard area that sits here. So I've got here some 2mm square section, which again is in the same wood as we're using for the doors. And that is pretty much bang on the size I need. So what we're going to do is make two strips of this, and then one of them we're going to modify. They need to be, I guess, no taller than that, as the upper deck sits on that. So if I use that as my measure, we'll cut two pieces at that height, and then we're going to have a bit of a play and see if we can create the little sink in there. That's the basis of our little cupboard, those two pieces together. Now, on the actual thing, there is a little silver sink about there, and then there's an empty area at the top with towels on. So we're going to start with the sink and see what happens. So you can see I am armed with my smallest chisel, and what I'm going to attempt to do is chisel out a small area, keeping the side in. And in theory, if we can cut a little section out as wide as the chisel would make it easier, then that'll form the space when we glue the two pieces together. So I'm just marking it out first. Okay, I'm going to do the next bit off camera because I know I won't be able to film it. I'm just going to cut down each side with the micro saw, and then we'll get this out with a chisel. Right, we've done that. Let's see if we can turn this into what we're looking for. Now these are actually supposed to be woodworking chisels, so they work really well with this. These FlexiCut, they are such good chisels. It's just a little bit tricky doing this on camera, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to go in with this diamond cut file now and finish it off. Right then, that is nearly where I want it. Just want to make that a little thinner. I'm going with a triangular one now just to sharpen up the back corners. There we go. So, what we now have is, there we go, do it like that. So if we glue those together like that, and then we glue a strip on the back to give us the back, then we have the cupboard. What I'm going to do is, and we're going to thin it down a little bit by sanding this edge. So as I'm happy with that, let's paint the sink in. There we go, that's the sink in. We'll give that a minute, then we'll sand it and see what that looks like. So I'm just giving our barn a little coat of varnish. I'm using Vallejo's acrylic gloss varnish. This brushes on really, really well, and a little bit goes a long way. A couple of coats and you get a really nice high shine gloss. So and it's really tough when it's dried. So I really quite like this product. I've got to say, I've never tried it through an airbrush. I've never really used it as a clear coat. I use it deliberately as a varnish, but yeah, I quite like this. So we're varnishing the bar, the little wardrobe thing, and also this little wooden panel here. So let's let that dry and then we'll come to do the installation. I also want to see if we can put some decking in to this area here around the wardrobe, cupboard, whatever it is, because with us making a modification we've got a gap, so I want to see if we can just fill that a little bit. We've got a little bit of work to do on the bar. What I want to do is paint the flooring, then I want to patch up this bit here, and we need to put the bar in to do that. So I think the first job is to paint the floor. I'm gonna go with black. Now Stephen made the comment that he thought it was tiled, but I'm not sure of the colour, so we're going to go with black. It will make everything stand out. First coat of my paint is drying, we can mark out the deck area. Now I've got a little bit of scrap deck from a bit of deck that we're not going to be using, and we go up to the edge of the bar. We know we're going to have to trim it, and up to that line there. So we're sort of there. So if I cut that first, okay, let's come back to this now, and I think we've got the width about right now. So yeah, I think what we're probably best doing is cutting a square section out, because we need to remove this bit of joggling here so that we can blend it in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it from that corner there, and actually probably worth getting the bar in. So if we put the bar in, you know that's going in there like that. Yeah, so the bar corner ends there. So if we cut down that corking line and then square it off, should be able to lift that bit of deck out now. Okay, so to make sure we've got a nice snug fit, I'm going to glue the bar in next. Okay, that is our bar in. And that's going to allow me to now accurately cut our section of deck. So what we want to do is, there is a margin plank that goes along the whole of the deck. I want to preserve that in the background there. Right, that wasn't bad for a first attempt eyeballing it. The angle's about right. I've just got to keep that angle now and line it up to that corner, this corner here. So I'll just come back into view a bit better for you. So if we line up that angle with the line and then move the whole part forward so that is in that corner, we should have our angle right and our line of cut. So now we just need to trim that edge back to there, and we should have a nice fitting bit of deck. I hope everyone's got their fingers crossed. Now, as always, I'm going to make it slightly oversized, because it's going to be easier to make it smaller than to make it bigger once I've cut it. Okay, let's see if you had your fingers crossed or not. Okay, just need to trim it down a little bit on this other edge now. But yes, you had your fingers crossed. Well done, everyone. Okay, I think that looks good enough. So, next thing I want to do is just check my little wardrobe thing. So, bear with me a minute. The height of the cupboard, it's no higher than this plastic part, so when it's on the deck, so I know we're not going to have an issue with it fouling. So that's good. It means I can put my deck in now, and then we can put the cupboard in after that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to line up that marked edge there with that, so that we can put the wardrobe in that place. We'll have to, as we're gluing wood on wood, we've got two options. We can either use super glue, or we can use wood glue. Now, if we use wood glue, that'll dry clear. If we use super glue, it can leach out into the wood, and on the deck particularly could change the colour, so we want to avoid that. So we'll use a tiny spot of wood glue. Okay, that's our deck patch done. So I am happy with that. We are not finished, however, and I just want to give it a final varnish. Okay, so we need some bar stools, and I've been thinking about different ways we could do that. Fabricating a seat out of a bit of plastic card, and punching out a rivet and sticking it on some wire. All of those possibilities I've explored, and one way or another I've decided they're too difficult, too tricky, won't look right, whatever. What I've ended up coming down to is these nails. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them off. We're going to drill some holes and mount them in, and we're going to paint them. The shaft needs to be stainless steel, and the seat is the same colour as that, so we'll have to paint that a dark brown colour. So yeah, I think that's going to work, and I think it's the quickest way of doing it. Now, these brass nails are what I use in my wooden model shipbuilding, and you can buy them in little bags, and they cost pence, so easy to get hold of in any of the shops that sell wooden model boat supplies, like Cornwall Model Boats or someone like that. Okay, so to make sure that we get our bar stools in a straight line, in a row, we're using the edge of some masking tape to place the drilling that we're going to do. So we're going to drill a hole for each one of them first, and then we can push the nails in once they're painted up. So we've got 6 to get into this space here, which is 20 millimeters long. So we're going to start at this end, level with the corner, and then every 3 millimeters we'll put another bar stool in, which will end it a bit short of the bar, but that's what we want because we've got a door entrance there, and when you look at it on the actual ship, there is a little bit of length of bar before the first stool. So hopefully that'll all look okay. So when you look at the bar stools, they're actually sort of a brushed steel type finish rather than a chrome finish. So I'm using 71063 silver, which is a bit duller than the stainless steel colour we've been using from MIG metal acrylics. So I think that'll be about right. It's quite a nice colour actually. And this is Model Air, so probably don't need to thin this. Yeah, that's going to look spot on, that. When you see them in better light, that is exactly the finish I was hoping for. And we'll leave these to dry for a little while so that we know the paint's nice and hard before we trim the length of the pins and then push them into place. Now, if they protrude a little bit into the underside, that is not an issue at all because we won't see it. And what we can do then is super glue them in from the underside, so we don't have to worry about glue on the upper surface where the deck is. Okay, that should do nicely.
So all aspects of those ships were brought together into this ship, and that's what made the ship so special. And so I laid out the plans of QE2, and I identified what areas we could reuse and perhaps what areas we could improve on, making the ship more efficient for the modern era. But the most important thing of all was that I was determined that this ship would have the legacy of the North Atlantic built into her, so that there were no compromises. And to offset that 40% premium in cost, I had to build and design a really big ship, because the bigger you build a passenger ship, relatively the less it costs to build and operate. So if you do it on a per passenger basis, as you get bigger, the price per passenger actually goes down. And this was my first iteration of the plan. And there's an awful lot of that still in this ship. But one of the fundamental problems with the design there is that these two public room decks, decks 2 and 3, that we're now on here on Queen Mary, they were up just below the lifeboats, as it was on QE2. And the problem was that it meant the cabins below those public rooms couldn't have balconies. And it's the balconies and the premium that you pay for having a balcony that offsets the huge cost of running the ship. And so that's why on the second iteration of the design, I brought those public rooms deck down to the bottom here, made them really, really high, and that's why we have these spectacular rooms like the Queen's Room, illuminations, and this room here. But it meant that that first passenger cabin deck, deck 4, could immediately be balcony status and start bringing in the revenue I needed to justify building this ship. Now, I tell you, there's no such thing as a perfect ship, and this ship by no means is perfect. A passenger ship is a compromise of so many conflicting design issues. And I'm often asked some questions. Why is the Britannia restaurant where it is? Why is it so difficult to get to the Queen's Room? Well, I wanted to put the Britannia restaurant at the centre of motion of the ship, so that when you're sitting in that restaurant, you feel the least motion. On other ships where the restaurant is right at the stern, if you're crossing the Atlantic in a huge storm, that restaurant is going to be going up and down, there's going to be sloshing underneath, and it could become uncomfortable. So I wanted the restaurant to be further forward where the motion was going to be the least. And a ship pivots about 2/3 from the front, and that's exactly where that Britannia restaurant is. And so it meant there was a space behind that I had to fill, and that's why we have those walkways at the side within the space of the Britannia restaurant, but separate. And that was my compromise for putting the Britannia restaurant where it is. I thought much better to have that than have uncomfortable people while they're dining. Up forward in the A staircase, there's a deck 3L where there's nothing. Why is that? Well, there may be nothing aft of the staircase because we've got these 2 decks of public rooms. So there's the illuminations directly behind that A staircase, but forward of it, there's another deck slotted in where the crew live. So within the 2 passenger cabin decks, there are 3 crew decks, and I needed that area, that 3L landing, to create an escape for the crew.
So on the actual ship, the bar, I can get it to focus, there we go. The bar has a name, which is the Terrice bar, and that's on a little silver strip that goes across the middle of that wooden piece there. And the question is, am I brave enough to try and paint that on? Go on then, let's have a go. I think that came up okay. Okay, the stools are now installed, so we need to now paint the tops, and I'm using 7984 flat brown. It's a fairly good match in terms of colour to what we've used with the walnut wood for the bar. And when you paint it straight onto the brass without any primer, it just helps lighten the colour a little bit. Just want to make sure we've got no brass visible from the nails. Now this is a flat brown, so it will need a varnish once it's dried. Okay, now this is the bar almost done. There's one last thing we need to do. There is a little metal sort of bar that comes up and then drops down to the deck just at the end here, which I guess is to stop people getting any further towards the door. Not quite sure, but it's quite a prominent feature, so I'm going to try and replicate that. I'm not sure how well this is going to show up, but I have some 0.02 lead wire here, and I think we can use that to effectively make what we need. So this stuff is very fragile. You can pull two ends of it and make it snap, but the flip side is it's brilliant for things like cable runs and stuff like that, because it's so easy to manipulate. So that's my basic shape. Just need to see if we can fit it. Should be about right. Go and test fit it, and if it test fits, we're gonna glue it in. There we go. That will do. Fine.